we're back on the Morgan Streetman Show. And Morgan, I want to dig into a little bit more about Kevin Clinesmith, former FBI lawyer, and he has gotten himself into some trouble.
Yeah, and apparently when President Trump won the election, he sent around an email to somebody, and it basically said, my blankety-blank name is all over all that paperwork, because he was scared. He's scared, I'm going to be found out. Maybe the president is going to fire me. And maybe he's also scared. Maybe I'm going to be criminally indicted, which, let's face it, if you forged an email, if you made up evidence, you work for the FBI and you made up evidence about an American citizen to get these super invasive spying powers put into gear against an American citizen. My goodness, shouldn't you face some kind of criminal charges? That's got to be basic level, or we literally don't have any law and order, even though we've got these law enforcement organizations running around doing whatever they want. And it's to the point where you see how they've treated President Trump. Anything that he does, when he tweets out during the impeachment hearings something about one of the witnesses, and, basically it's not a threat. It just says everywhere she went, it basically turned into a disaster. Then you've got them saying, "Oh, this is intimidation of a witness," and this is terrible. It's criminal what he's doing. Well, actually, first of all, no, it's not. And if you look at the underlying facts, it's not intimidation of a witness. It's the expression of an opinion, which under the First Amendment he's allowed to do. It's not like he said, "Boy, if she doesn't shut up, she might disappear." Now that might be intimidation of a witness, but that's not at all what he said. But you've got them weaponizing the criminal justice system against their enemies, and they use it against their enemies. But now when it comes time to look at them, take a look at their conduct, then they don't want that to go forward. And it's the same thing that we've seen with Andrew McCabe and all the leaks that he made, and he was not candid. He lacked candor. For us, that'd be called lying to the FBI. For him, even though he lied to the FBI, he lacked candor, and, we're going to demote him. Well, if it was me or you folks, we'd be in jail. We'd be in jail for like 5 or 10 years for lying to the FBI if we did what Andrew McCabe did. The guy was selectively leaking information from active FBI investigations. That's a crime in and of itself. Then he lied about it. Remember, they can't even talk about these investigations when you call them before Congress. We had Rod Rosenstein in there. Everybody else, I can't even believe you're asking me about this investigation. We couldn't possibly talk about these things while they're ongoing because the sanctity of our investigation is so important to us. But then over here, on the other side, they're leaking out details that they want to get out. What a bunch of hypocrites, and frankly, what a bunch of criminals. And then you add to it, I just think it's tragically comical, this whole thing with the girlfriends. Does everybody at the FBI got a boyfriend or girlfriend also at the FBI, some of whom are married, some of whom aren't married?
Hey, they work long hours.
They work long hours. That's a great excuse, right? So, I'm just wondering, when do they have time to do their investigatory work? You're supposed to be investigating crimes, not your coworker. And we'll just leave it at that. But anyway, it just strikes me that these guys are all, and gals, are all involved in the exact same investigations, right?
Right.
They're all on that mid-year exam of Hillary Clinton emails. You're talking about Peter Strzok, Kevin Clinesmith. They're all on the Crossfire Hurricane allegedly counterintelligence investigation against then-candidate Trump. You got Peter Strzok. You got Kevin Clinesmith. You got Sally Moyer, Kevin Clinesmith's alleged girlfriend, and we don't know, for sure that she was his girlfriend. That hasn't been admitted yet. That's just what's been alleged and reported. They also both worked for the guy who's now the intelligence community inspector general, right? Michael Atkinson. They both worked for Atkinson, who's the guy who was involved in switching up the whistleblower application. And Roxanne, as you're pointing out, they both also worked on the Mueller investigation. And Clinesmith was actually removed from the Mueller investigation for his biased conduct, his biased messages. These people were 100% never Trumpers. It's in their personal emails. It's in their online posts. It's in their instant messages back and forth, their SMS messages back and forth. They couldn't stand Trump. They never wanted him to be president. They thought that it would be an absolute tragedy if he ever became president. And just like Peter Strzok and Lisa Page discussed in their text message, where they finally were honest about things, because they're not being honest now, but where they finally were honest with each other, and they said that just like they talked about in Andy's office, Andrew McCabe, they had to have an insurance policy against President Trump being elected and against the American people being so stupid as to vote for this terrible, terrible person. And so that's exactly what they did. They faked emails. They cooked up these FISA things because they were just sure if they could go through all the communications that President Trump had and all his staff had, they were certain they would find something. And all they needed to do was find something to hang their hat on, and that was their insurance policy. The problem for them is they really didn't find anything, right? I mean, that's why the 2.5-year Russia investigation totally fizzled out. There was no collusion, and frankly, there was no obstruction, although people take issue with the obstruction. Well, I mean, if there was no conspiracy, no collusion to begin with, then where's the obstruction of justice in fighting back against that investigation? Okay, now maybe reasonable minds can disagree about that, but there was absolutely no collusion. There was no involvement ever established between the Trump campaign and the Russians to affect the election, to steal the DNC emails, all these allegations. Remember, we've heard them all. We've heard, Clapper and Brennan saying, well, there's definitely something there. I mean, at one point, Brennan, earlier this year, I think it was in February, and I know we have the clip somewhere in my archive, but I'm not going to go digging for it right now. But in February this year, remember, he said, beware the Ides of March, remember? And that he thought Robert Mueller would indict maybe the week before so as to avoid that old phrase, the old Roman phrase, beware the Ides of March, that he'd probably indict maybe the first week of March, because the Ides of March is the middle of March. And so we've just got example after example. And now it's spun forward into the Schiff show, right, the impeachment hearings, at which not a single witness has said that there's any evidence of a quid pro quo.
I know we're going to get into the impeachment hearings, but before we do, quick question to wrap that up.
Yeah.
Do you think the FBI on paper should have some sort of, in part of their hiring process, aren't you supposed to be a candidate who doesn't have strong leanings toward one party or the other? Isn't the protection of and sanctity of the country paramount to that?
Well, I think that was one of the original ideals, supposedly. Of course, we remember back how the FBI started in some of their history, and I mean, they've basically always been political. But I know that prior to President Obama, there was this idea that they should not be politicized. But I think during the Obama years, all of the government service and the military was highly politicized. And we're going to talk some about that in the story we're going to hear about later with respect to the military and some of the things that have been going on there. But it's the weaponization of these bureaucracies against your political opponents. And that's what we saw. And I don't think the President Obama's administration was not involved in this. They were. Remember the text messages back and forth between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok saying that the White House wants to be kept fully apprised of everything that's going on? This is not some rogue operation. This is something this is something that is being run by the commander-in-chief. And it is the use of the full power of the state to investigate people against your political opponents. And I think that's really sad. It's really sad. But that's the world that we live in today. And we're seeing even more evidence of it with these impeachment hearings, which this is just like a show trial. I mean, they're completely railroading this, but they can't even get it to a successful conclusion. That's what's so hilarious.
You almost want it to keep going because there's just going to be something next.
I mean, it's just a train wreck. And
right.
Every witness that they've had has had to admit that, well, we don't know of any actual quid pro quo. We don't have any direct evidence. But my speculation is I just assumed that that's what had to be going on. I mean, that's what Ambassador Sondland said, right? And they make him out to be Trump's buddy. That's not correct. He's not Trump's buddy. In fact, he was a never-Trumper at one point, refused to be associated with the Trump campaign. He only started being a quote-unquote Trump supporter after President Trump won the election. That's when he decided to donate $1 million to the inauguration committee. And, you know, before that, he was a Jeb Bush guy. He was a never-Trumper. He refused to even be associated with giving money to President Trump. And this, you can find all of this in the news if you dig. Well, you can still find it. I mean, at some point, Google will make sure that you can't. But for right now, you can. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard. And if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.